Every child deserves a parent, but does every parent truly deserve a child? That question becomes painfully complicated in the case of 10-year-old Rebecca Baptiste. At first glance, her parents appeared to be doing what any caring parent would do in a moment of crisis. But were they ever truly good parents at all? On July 27, 2025, Rebecca was discovered unresponsive on a highway, a shocking scene that triggered a case both haunting and complex. The chain of events began with a frantic 911 call from her father, Richard Baptiste, and his girlfriend, Anicia Woods. They claimed Rebecca had collapsed while trying to run away. When Holbrook police arrived, they found the little girl lying beside the road, unresponsive and fighting for her life. Officers immediately attempted CPR, a life-saving step that Anicia, despite being a trained nurse, had failed to perform. She later admitted she was too scared, claiming she only gave rescue breaths after covering Rebecca's mouth with a t-shirt, citing an unfounded fear that the 10-year-old carried a sexually transmitted disease. What the officers didn't understand at first was what could drive a child so young to flee her home in the first place. Police pressed Richard and Anicia for answers, asking what led to the incident and how long Rebecca had been unconscious. Their explanation wasn't clear. They insisted poor cell service delayed their call for help and said they only realized she had run away when a neighbor brought her back. At that point, the ambulance arrived and Rebecca was quickly loaded inside as medics fought to save her life. As first responders rushed Rebecca into the ambulance, officers turned their attention to her father, pressing him for answers about what had led to this moment. When asked why he and Anicia had taken Rebecca home despite knowing she was unresponsive, Richard offered yet another excuse. He claimed this wasn't the first time Rebecca had run away. In fact, he said, she had attempted to flee multiple times before. The family had recently moved from Phoenix at the beginning of July, relocating to a remote campsite near Concho. The move raised eyebrows because there were no modern facilities there, not even electricity, and access to water was scarce. Still, the most troubling issue wasn't the family's choice of living arrangements, but how they had responded to a child in obvious medical distress. While paramedics fought to stabilize Rebecca, officers approached her siblings waiting in the car, hoping the children might shed light on what they had seen.
You guys doing okay?
Yeah.
Yeah? So what happened today?
Today she ran away.
She ran away?
Yeah.
Okay. And then what happened?
And then she came back home.
Okay.
Officers questioned Rebecca's parents again, this time about her schooling and daily life before the incident. Anicia claimed that Rebecca's injuries came from a fall into the wash, but investigators were unconvinced. When pressed, both Woods and Baptiste initially denied knowing what had caused her condition. At that stage, police were still treating the case as routine diligence. They hadn't yet realized that the real culprits were standing directly in front of them. For the moment, the couple was merely admonished about child care and safety, and then allowed to go. Everything shifted once Rebecca was taken to Little Colorado Medical Center. The bruises covering her body were clear from the beginning, but the hospital's examination revealed something far more disturbing. The first word a doctor used to describe what had been done to the child was torture. She had bruises from head to toe, malnutrition, dehydration, beating, and burn marks on her, and even on her brothers, cuts and abrasions all over her body. She also suffered a fatal brain bleed, along with multiple signs of physical abuse, pulled out hairs, missing toenails, and black eyes. That was when the truth began to surface. The family's move to an isolated campsite now made sense in the worst possible way. When investigators showed Richard Baptiste the horrendous photos of his daughter's injuries, he displayed no emotion. Eventually, he admitted to striking Rebecca with a belt as punishment for running away, though he denied responsibility for her catastrophic head injuries. Authorities also discovered bloody clothing hidden in the family's tent, clothing that had been changed before they called for help. At that point, The priority was survival. Rebekah was airlifted to Phoenix Children's Hospital and placed on life support. For 3 days, doctors fought to save her, but on the third day, she slipped away. Even before her death, the investigation had kicked fully into motion, and it became clear that this was not an accident. Prosecutors would later describe it as the final act of long-term abuse. The darkest part of the story, however, wasn't only what happened inside the family's tent. It was the fact that warning signs had been raised for years, yet ignored until it was too late. At her school, Empower College Prep, staff made at least 12 urgent reports to Arizona's Department of Child Safety, describing clear, alarming evidence of abuse. Each time, their pleas were dismissed for lack of evidence. On at least 4 occasions, DCS assured the school an investigator was handling the case, but no help ever came. Phoenix police had also flagged concerns to DCS, documenting at least 5 encounters with the family since 2018. Yet, each time, the trail went cold. One such incident came in April 2025, after yet another report from her school. An officer noticed Rebekah with a black eye. Instead of probing further, he accepted the explanation that she had been struck by a ball at a party. No photographs were taken, and the report concluded there was no direct indication of abuse. Though DCS was notified, the case was quietly closed. Before her name became a headline, Rebecca Baptiste was simply a little girl who loved the color magenta. At Empower College Prep in Phoenix, she was remembered as a bright, affectionate student who excelled in class, won awards, and spoke often of her dream to one day become a teacher. But even those fond memories were shadowed by troubling signs that something was terribly wrong.
I was lucky because I got to show you love when the people you wanted to most refused.
At Empower College Prep, Executive Director Brian Holman carefully documented every concern, filing report after report as Rebekah's condition worsened. And it just got worse when Richard moved the family to the house 8 miles down a dirt road. In that suffocating isolation, the outside world disappeared, and their control over Rebekah became absolute. Abuse that had once been visible in glimpses was now hidden away, free to escalate without watchful eyes. After Rebekah's death, the Department of Child Safety publicly pushed back, insisting they had received only 5 calls in the past year. Of those, they claimed, just 1 met the statutory threshold for investigation. The response ignited fury. Educators and parents condemned the agency's failures, staging protests and demanding accountability for years of inaction. Even Rebekah's own parents admitted during questioning that state agencies had been involved with their daughter multiple times before. According to records released by DCS, concerns about Rebekah's home life began when she was barely 8 months old. The first came in August 2015, citing possible drug use by her mother, Sandy Hawkins, and Richard Baptiste. In May 2016, another report alleged neglect, pointing to untreated medical issues like a severe diaper rash and an ear infection, but investigators dismissed it as unsubstantiated. In March 2019, a report substantiating neglect led to the removal of Rebekah and her siblings from the home. Yet by 2023 and 2024, requests for court-ordered supervision were dismissed, allowing Richard to regain custody. In the months leading up to Rebekah's death, the allegations increased. Woods was accused of physically abusing Rebekah's siblings and eventually Rebekah herself. On January 16, 2025, a report alleged that Richard and Woods punished Rebekah by denying her bathroom and water breaks, but DCS marked the case unsubstantiated. Just 4 months later, on May 19th, another report alleged the children were being physically abused with spankings. When DCS attempted a home visit in Phoenix, the family had already moved nearly 200 miles away. After Rebekah's death, the lies came crumbling. Richard Baptiste and Anicia Woods were arrested and charged with first-degree murder, kidnapping, and child abuse. In police interviews, Richard admitted to beating his daughter with a belt, punishments aimed at stopping her repeated escape attempts. When asked about the consequences she might face, Woods coldly guessed she would serve some jail time. Richard, in a rare moment of remorse, told investigators, "I do not deserve to be a father." Both remain in custody on $1 million bond as prosecutors prepare to bring their cases to trial, with the possibility of joining them together. As the legal process unfolds, Rebecca's community has turned its grief into a call for justice. Her uncle Damon Hawkins voiced what many felt, that a broken system had failed his niece long before her brutal death.
She spent the last 4 days in the hospital by herself. And the only thing DCS can say is, well, I'm sorry that you weren't informed.
Hawkins says he cannot even begin to comprehend the suffering his niece endured. At Empower College Prep, they honored her memory with a celebration of life. The gymnasium was filled with her favorite color, magenta, and a tree was planted as a living tribute to the little girl who once dreamed of becoming a teacher. When Rebecca's body was laid to rest at a Roman Catholic church in Surprise, Arizona, her story had already shaken the community and beyond. She was failed twice. First by the two people who should have given everything to protect her, and then by a system designed to be her last defense. Does this type of parent deserve to have a child at all? Let's know in the comments.